You know, sometimes you just want to get where you're going, you're tired and you want a drama-free journey. That's never going to happen if you buy one of these. Welcome everyone to the Toyota GR Yaris, quite possibly the craziest hot hatch that's been launched in the past decade. Now, if you're any sort of car fan, you'll have heard plenty about this already, and probably read or watched some reviews that suggest, well, it's pretty much the second coming. But we don't go in for hype here at What Car, we just do straight, honest car reviews. So is this really as great as you might have been led to believe? Well, that's what we're going to be finding out in this video. But before we get started, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you want to buy any new car, we could save you quite a lot of money on that. So click the link up there at the top of the screen to head over to the deals section of our website, whatcar.com, after you've watched this video, obviously. So let's start with the elephant in the room, because this is a Toyota Yaris that starts at £30,000. The Ford Fiesta ST, which is another hot hatch about the same sort of size as this, well, that starts at £23,000. So what on earth is going on? Well, the first thing you need to understand is that this isn't really a Yaris at all. It has the front end of a Yaris, but it's joined to what's effectively the rear end of a Corolla. Now, the reason Toyota has done this is because the rear suspension design on the larger Corolla platform has made it possible for this car to have four-wheel drive. You may have noticed there are no rear doors as well. The standard Yaris is 5-door only, remember, and the whole look of the car is very different as well. You've got these swollen wheel arches here, the front end of the car looks a lot less fussy, and there's also a carbon fibre roof. That's partly to save weight, but also to lower the car's centre of gravity. In fact, not a single body panel on this car is shared with a regular Yaris, and the bonnet, the doors, and the boot lid, well, they are all made of aluminium to save even more weight. So why has Toyota gone to all that bother and not just fitted a big engine and stiffer suspension to the regular Yaris? Well, it all comes down to rallying. You see, to enter a car into the World Rally Championship, it first has to be homologated, which essentially means it needs to be based on a model sold in sufficient numbers to the general public. And back in the 80s and 90s, the sales number requirements were fairly modest, so manufacturers used to effectively build the ideal rally car and then sell a handful of production versions of it to meet the rules. That's why cars like the Ford RS200, Peugeot 205 T16 and original Mitsubishi Lancer Evo ever made it onto the road in the first place. It doesn't really happen that much anymore, partly because the sales requirements are higher and partly because rallying just isn't as popular as it once was. So modern rally cars are mostly just based on regular models like the Ford Fiesta. So the fact that Toyota has decided to build a homologation special to go rallying in is the main reason there's so much hype around the GR. Although it won't actually ever go rallying because of a combination of coronavirus and the rules changing to only allow hybrids, but that's another story. Now, there are three different versions of the GR. There's the entry-level car, which costs £30,000, and there's a convenience pack model, which costs about £32,000. That gets you a few extra creature comforts. And then there's the £33,500 circuit pack model that we've got here. This car gets bespoke 18-inch forged alloys with extra sticky Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres. It also gets different suspension to other versions of the GR, and it gets limited slip differentials at both the front and the rear. Really, it's the one you want. Don't worry, we'll go for a drive in a minute, but before we do, let's just have a quick look around inside here. Now, the whole look and feel of the interior is very similar to what you'll find in the regular Yaris, and when you consider the much higher price of this car, that isn't brilliant news. There's a lot of hard plastic on the dashboard, on the doors here, and compared to a Golf GTI, which costs the same sort of money as this car, it doesn't feel particularly upmarket. There's a little bit of red stitching on the steering wheel, on the gear lever gaiter, on the seats, and a bit more on the handbrake as well. But otherwise, there's an awful lot of grey in here. On the subject of seats, these are completely different to the ones you get in the regular Yaris. They hold you in place much better through corners, but also they are surprisingly comfortable on long journeys. The only thing you might not like is that you do sit quite high up, so this isn't the conventional sporty driving position that you get in, say, a Honda Civic Type R, where you sit lower down with your legs stretched out more. But there's nothing wrong with sitting high up, and actually the ergonomics in here, they're very good. The gear lever, that's easy to reach. There's a lot of adjustment in the steering wheel as well. And actually, because you sit high up, you do get a good view out, which is a good thing when you're doing the sort of speeds this car is capable of. The infotainment system, well, it's not brilliant, but you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring as standard. So you can effectively bypass Toyota's own operating system and use your phones instead. And the fact the screen is mounted nice and high up on the dashboard makes it easy to see. Go for the convenience pack model and you'll get a more powerful JBL sound system. You'll also get a built-in sat-nav. I'm not really sure why you'd need that these days because you can just use Google Maps or Waze on your phone and mirror it to the screen here. You also get more safety kit, including rear cross-traffic alert and blind spot monitoring. Plus, you get front parking sensors and a head-up display as well. Now, the regular Yaris isn't very roomy in the back, but the GR, well, even when you've managed to squeeze past this ridiculously narrow gap here, you won't find very much space in here at all. And the boot, well, that's tiny as well, smaller than a Fiesta ST's, let alone other hot hatches that are available for this sort of money. We managed to fit just 3 carry-on size suitcases below the partial shelf. But the thing is, do you really care about not having much space? It's not as though this is a 2-seater drop top or something. You can still carry 4 people and some luggage around. And the thing is, being fairly small is a good thing when you're driving on narrow country roads like this. Remember, some of the greatest hot hatchbacks ever, like the Peugeot 205 GTI and the Renault Clio Williams, were tiny by modern car standards. And it's not as though roads have got wider over the last 30 years or so. But it's not just size this car gets right, it is incredibly well engineered, pretty much across the board. Let's start with the engine. It's not that big, it's only a 1.6 litre, but it has a rather large turbocharger strapped to it, so it pumps out 257 brake horsepower. Toyota quotes a 0-62 time of 5.5 seconds, which is seriously quick by hot hatch standards, but get this. The other day at our proving ground, this car managed 0-62 in 4.6 seconds. And before you go thinking that Toyota sent us a car that's been played around and has a lot more power than it's supposed to have, the GR can do 0-60 in second gear, whereas to get to 62 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, which is the acceleration time that most manufacturers quote these days, takes a change into third gear, and that explains a lot of the difference. Now, when you first start the engine, it does sound a little bit underwhelming, to be honest, partly because it's a 3-cylinder, but it absolutely loves to be revved, and when you get the revs above 3,000 RPM, it sounds great. And I know that some of the noise is being piped through the speakers rather than genuinely coming from the engine, but I don't really care because it doesn't sound fake and it's a lot more exciting sounding than a Civic Type R, for example. And the thing is, because it's four-wheel drive, there are no issues with traction, even on damp roads in what's really quite cold weather today. The Type R has more power, yes, but if you try to use it all in these conditions, you'll just get a load of wheel spin. Now, you can actually change the distribution of power between the front and the rear wheels by twisting this little dial down here. If you switch to Sport, then you get 70% sent to the rear. And in that mode, if you accelerate hard out of a corner, you can really feel the rear end of the car helping you steer round. This isn't some sort of leery hot hatch that's going to swap ends on you like a previous BMW M140i might, for example, but it just adds another layer to the driving experience that you don't get in the vast majority of other hot hatches, even many four-wheel drive ones. And the GR changes direction brilliantly as well, so you can really chuck it into corners. That's partly because it's actually very light for something with four-wheel drive, but also because body control is fantastic. The steering is fairly heavy. That's something I'm usually not a fan of because it can blunt the sensation of weight build-up that you get as you turn into corners. But in the GR, you always know exactly how close you are to the limits of grip. And there's enough precision there as well to allow you to be really accurate with where you're placing the car on the road. What's not so good? Well, the ride is certainly firm. This is the Circuit Pack model, remember, with circuit-tuned suspension. But it isn't comically firm like a Renault Megane Trophy, for example. And because of the sophistication of the suspension, the tyre is always in contact with the road, so you aren't skipping across the surface whenever you encounter a pothole or a drain cover. And that is more evidence that this car has been designed to work really well on British roads. The gearbox as well, it isn't quite as brilliant as the Type R's, but it's still really nice to use. It's quite heavy by hot hatch standards actually, but you get a really nice sense of mechanical engagement with the car. And although the pedals, they're not perfectly positioned, it's still pretty easy to blip the accelerator on the downshifts to match the engine revs. Although you can actually just cheat and press this button down here and the car takes care of all of that for you. But here are 5 more things you might want to know about the GR Yaris. All versions of the GR have a 5-year 100,000 mile warranty as standard, which is better cover than you get on the vast majority of other hot hatches. In our real world fuel economy tests, the GR averaged 32.8 mpg, which is only slightly behind the official government figure of 34.4 mpg. The GR is surprisingly tempting if you're buying on PCP finance. Put down a 10% deposit on this circuit pack model and you'll be paying about £390 a month over the next 3.5 years, which is a lot less than you'd pay on an equivalent Civic Type R. You will have to wait for around 10 months for your GR if you order one now, because supply is limited and demand is really strong. That explains why you'll find some cars listed in the classifieds already, with owners asking as much as £40,000. Apart from the 3 different versions of the GR I talked about earlier, there isn't much choice when it comes to personalisation. For an extra £880 you can have this pearlescent red or pearlescent white. An extra £585 gets you metallic black, or you could just save the money and go for plain old solid white. So the big question, is the GR really worthy of all the hype? Well, for once, this is a car that absolutely is. It's phenomenally good fun. Fast, grippy, playful, and actually, if you forget about the Yaris nameplate, it's pretty good value as well. Better than a Type R? Well, that's a tricky question to answer, because although both cars cost about the same, they are in fact very different. On a sunny day when the road's nice and dry, on a Welsh mountain road for example, the Civic is tough to beat. But on a narrow country road like this, particularly in winter when there's wet, mud and God knows what else all over the road, I'll take the GR every day. But for lots more information about the GR, head over to our website whatcar.com, or just click the link up there at the top of the screen. And remember, if you want to buy any new car, whatcar.com is the place to get a great deal. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, then do please give it a like. Leave us a comment if you want to ask anything about the GR or anything else car related actually. And other than that, we'll see you next time.